This is Mr. Sterling. There is a specific kind of man in this country right now who does not fit any of the categories the culture has prepared for him. He is not single. He is not avoiding commitment. He has been with the same woman for 6 years, 7 years, sometimes longer. He is loyal. He is present. He has built a genuine life alongside her, shared finances in practice if not on paper, a home they maintain together, a partnership that by every functional measure looks like a marriage. He will not marry her, not because he does not love her, not because he is incapable of commitment. He has already made the commitment. He lives inside it every day. What he will not do is convert that commitment into the specific legal and financial structure that modern marriage has become. And when he is asked why, when she asks him directly, when his own family asks him what he is waiting for, he often cannot give an answer that satisfies anyone, because the honest answer requires an explanation longer than the moment allows. I am going to give the full explanation today, not to talk men out of marriage or to construct a case against commitment, but because a growing number of men have looked clearly at what modern marriage actually is as a legal and financial instrument, separate from what marriage means as a relationship, and have made a calculated decision that the instrument does not serve the partnership they have already built. Understanding that decision requires understanding a distinction that most conversations about marriage refuse to make. Here is the framework. Marriage today operates as two entirely separate things that have been fused together in the popular imagination as if they were one. There is the relationship, the love, the partnership, the shared life, the daily commitment two people make to each other regardless of what paperwork exists. And there is the legal contract, the specific set of state-enforced financial and custodial arrangements that activate the moment two people sign a marriage license and that determine, with binding force, what happens to both people if the relationship ends. A man can fully commit to the first without accepting the second. And an increasing number of men are doing exactly that. Not because they have given up on love, because they have examined the contract closely enough to understand what they would actually be agreeing to. 7 reasons why. Each one specific. Each one drawn from the actual mechanics of what modern marriage as a legal structure requires and produces. 1. He has watched what the contract does to men when the relationship it protected ends. Call him Patrick. 51 years old. Ran his own contracting business for 2 decades. Married at 29 to a woman he genuinely loved. Built a life with. Raised 2 children alongside. The marriage ended after 17 years for reasons that were, by his own honest account, shared between both of them, rather than the fault of either. What followed the ending was not primarily an emotional reckoning. It was a legal and financial one that consumed the next 4 years of his life. The business he had built from nothing was valued as a marital asset, and its value was divided according to a formula that did not account for the specific years of unpaid labor he had put into building it before the marriage began generating any income at all. The house was sold. The retirement accounts were split. A support obligation was calculated based on his historical earnings. During years he can no longer reliably reproduce because the industry has changed and his health is not what it was. Patrick is not bitter about the marriage. He describes those 17 years, honestly, as some of the best of his life. What he is precise and unambiguous about is the legal aftermath. The specific mechanics of a contract that did not ask whether the division it produced was fair to the actual history of what each person contributed. It applied a formula. The formula did not know Patrick. It knew only the categories the law recognizes, and it processed his life through those categories with the same indifference it would apply to anyone else's. Men who have watched this happen to a friend, a brother, a father, or who have lived it themselves, carry the specific knowledge of what the contract actually does when it activates, not what people assume it does. What it actually does mechanically in family courts across this country, to men whose marriages end regardless of the reasons for the ending or the character of either party involved. That knowledge changes the calculation, not the love. The willingness to sign the specific document that makes the love subject to that formula. 2. He understands that the legal definition of partnership and his lived experience of partnership are not the same thing. There is a specific distinction that men who have examined this closely have arrived at, and that most conversations about marriage never make explicit. Partnership, as he lives it daily with the woman he loves, is built on continuous mutual choice. Every day, in ways large and small, they choose each other. They show up for each other. The relationship is sustained by the ongoing decision of two people who want to be building a life together, and who demonstrate that wanting through consistent action. Legal marriage does not operate on that principle. It operates on a single point of entry that then activates a set of binding obligations, regardless of whether the continuous mutual choice that sustained the relationship before the marriage continues to sustain it after. The contract does not require ongoing demonstration. It requires only the initial signature, and then it holds, with the full enforcement power of the state, regardless of what happens to the actual partnership in the years that follow. A man who has built a relationship on continuous mutual choice understands intuitively that the choosing is what makes the relationship real. He does not need a legal instrument to bind him to something he chooses freely every day. What concerns him about the instrument is what happens if the continuous choosing stops on her side while the legal obligation continues to bind him regardless. He would be legally bound to a formula that activated on a single day years ago, and that does not care whether the partnership that justified the binding is still genuinely present. He is not distrustful of her specifically. He is precise about what the contract actually protects and what it does not. It does not protect the ongoing relationship. It protects the state's interest in a clean and enforceable resolution if the relationship ends. Those are different things. And a man who understands the difference is not choosing against partnership when he declines the contract. He is choosing the partnership over the contract, specifically because he has concluded that the contract adds legal risk without adding to the actual quality or durability of what he and his partner have already built. 3. He has done the financial modelling, and the modelling does not support what the culture tells him marriage provides. There is a specific and measurable financial reality to modern marriage, as a legal contract that a man with any facility for financial reasoning can model with reasonable accuracy. And the modelling, for a significant number of men, does not produce a result that supports the assumption that marriage improves his financial position relative to a committed unmarried partnership. Consider what the contract actually does financially. It converts his individually earned assets, accumulated before and during the relationship, into marital property subject to division according to state formulas that vary but that consistently treat the marriage as the operative unit rather than tracking individual contribution with precision. It creates exposure to support obligations calculated on historical income that may not reflect his current or future earning capacity. It creates a legal entanglement that, should the relationship end, imposes significant transaction costs, legal fees, valuation disputes, the specific and substantial expense of formally dissolving a contract that was comparatively simple to enter and is comparatively difficult and expensive to exit. None of this changes if the underlying relationship, the actual partnership, remains exactly as committed and exactly as loving whether or not the legal contract exists. He can build the shared life, the shared finances in practice, the shared home, the shared future, all of it, through arrangements that do not require the specific state-enforced contract of marriage. Cohabitation agreements, individually structured financial arrangements, estate planning documents that accomplish many of the protective functions marriage is assumed to provide without the specific downside exposure the marital contract creates. He is not choosing against financial partnership. He is choosing a different legal structure for that partnership, one that he has more control over, one that does not activate a state formula the moment paperwork is signed, one that reflects, with more precision than the marital contract typically allows, the actual history and actual intentions of the two specific people involved, rather than the generic categories the law has developed for marriages in general. The math, run honestly, tells him this is the more rational structure, and a man who has learned to trust his own honest math over the cultural assumption that marriage is simply what committed partnership requires, is a man who is going to act on what the math tells him. 4. He watched the culture change what marriage is supposed to provide him without changing what it requires of him. This is the climax of everything in this video. The single most significant and least acknowledged shift that has produced the specific calculation a growing number of committed men are making. For most of the history of marriage as a social institution, the exchange it represented was relatively clear, whatever one thinks of the fairness of that exchange. Each partner brought something the other did not have and needed, and the legal structure of marriage formalized and protected that exchange. Whatever the specifics, both parties understood generally what marriage was providing them and what it required of them in return. That clarity has eroded, not because commitment stopped mattering, but because the specific things marriage as an institution was historically understood to provide, financial security through combined resources, a structured division of domestic labor, a stable environment for raising children, have all become available, to a significant degree, outside the marital contract. A committed unmarried partnership can provide financial partnership, domestic partnership, a stable co-parenting environment, genuine and durable love, all without the specific legal contract of marriage. What has not eroded and has, in some respects, intensified is what the legal contract of marriage requires of him if it ends. The exposure has remained largely intact even as the exclusive benefits marriage once provided have become available through other structures. He is looking at an exchange that used to make sense and that no longer does. He can get the partnership, the love, the shared life, the co-parenting, all of it, without the contract. What the contract adds specifically is legal exposure in the event the partnership ends, exposure he can avoid through other legal instruments that accomplish many of the same protective functions with more precision and less downside risk. The culture kept telling him that marriage is what committed men do. It did not update that message when the specific value proposition of the legal contract changed. He updated the assessment himself, and what he found, when he ran it honestly, is that the contract increasingly asks him to accept a specific and quantifiable risk in exchange for a set of benefits he can access through other means. That is not cynicism about love. It is precision about legal structure. And a man capable of making that distinction clearly is not a man who has stopped believing in commitment. He is a man who has stopped conflating commitment with a particular legal contract that was designed for a set of circumstances that no longer fully apply to his situation. 5. He is protecting the relationship from becoming a legal transaction in the eyes of both of them. There is a subtle psychological shift that occurs in many marriages once the legal contract is signed that men who have observed it closely describe with real precision. Before the marriage, the relationship operates on continuous mutual investment. After the marriage, for some couples, a portion of that investment quietly relaxes because the legal structure now provides a form of security that no longer requires the same daily demonstration. This is not universal. Many marriages sustain the same quality of mutual investment after the contract as before it, but a significant enough number do not that the pattern is worth naming honestly. The legal guarantee in certain relationships becomes a substitute for the continuous choosing rather than a formalization of it. And a man who has watched this happen, in his own previous relationships or in the relationships of men close to him, has developed a specific wariness about what the contract might do to the quality of the partnership he currently has. He does not want the legal guarantee to become a reason for either of them to invest slightly less in the continuous choosing that has made the relationship what it is. He wants the relationship to remain something both of them are actively building every day because they want to, not something that persists because the legal cost of leaving has become too high to make leaving practical. This is a genuinely protective instinct rather than an avoidant one. He is choosing to keep the relationship in the category of things that are chosen freely rather than moving it into the category of things that are legally required. And he believes, based on what he has observed, that the relationship is stronger for remaining in the first category than it would be in the second. 6. He has calculated what he stands to lose against what he stands to gain, and the ledger does not balance in favor of the contract. Every significant decision a man makes involves an assessment of risk against reward. This is not cynicism. It is the basic architecture of intelligent decision-making that men apply to every other significant commitment in their lives, their careers, their investments, their business partnerships, without anyone accusing them of being incapable of genuine investment because they assess the risk before committing fully. Applied to the marital contract specifically, the assessment looks like this. The reward of signing the legal document beyond the relationship itself, which he already has without it, is largely symbolic and social. Recognition from family and community, a specific cultural marker of commitment, certain tax and inheritance benefits that vary by jurisdiction, and that can often be substantially replicated through other legal instruments. The risk of signing the legal document is specific, quantifiable, and significant. Exposure to a formula-based division of assets that may not reflect actual individual contribution. Exposure to support obligations calculated on historical rather than current circumstances. The specific transaction cost, financial and emotional, of formally dissolving the contract should the relationship end despite both parties' genuine intentions at the time of signing. He runs this ledger and finds that the reward side is largely already available to him through the relationship he has built without the contract, while the risk side is entirely specific to the contract itself and adds nothing to the quality of the partnership he already has. The rational conclusion, for a man thinking with the same clarity he applies to every other major decision in his life, is that the contract is asking him to accept a specific downside in exchange for benefits that are largely already present or that are available through other means. This is not a man who does not value commitment. This is a man who values his own clear thinking enough to apply it honestly to every major decision in his life, including this one. 7. What he actually wants and why he believes he can build it without the contract that used to be required to access it. Here is where this lands. Not with a case against marriage as an institution or a claim that no man should ever sign the contract, with an honest account of what a specific and growing category of committed men has concluded after examining the contract clearly rather than accepting the cultural assumption that commitment and the legal marital contract are the same thing. He wants what every generation of committed men has wanted: a partner who chooses him fully and who he chooses fully in return. A shared life built on genuine mutual investment. A family, if that is part of the picture, raised in a stable and loving environment. A future built together, deliberately, across years of consistent choice. He believes, based on the honest examination he has done, that he can build all of this without the specific legal contract that used to be the only available vehicle for accomplishing it. He believes the relationship itself, sustained through continuous mutual choice and formalized through legal instruments more precisely tailored to his and his partner's actual situation than a generic marital contract, can provide everything he actually wants while avoiding a specific and quantifiable risk that the marital contract adds without adding proportionate value. He may be right. He may be wrong. The relationship he has built may prove as durable and as valuable as any legally married partnership, or it may face difficulties the marital contract would have addressed more cleanly. This is a genuine and ongoing question that does not have a single correct answer for every man in every situation. What is not in question is the seriousness of his commitment or the depth of his love simply because he has declined a specific legal instrument. A man who has built a genuine partnership, who shows up daily, who has run his own honest assessment of the legal structure available to formalize that partnership and made a considered decision based on that assessment, is not a man who is avoiding commitment. He is a man who is thinking clearly about the specific legal vehicle through which he expresses it. That clarity deserves respect rather than the reflexive judgment the culture tends to apply to men who have made this particular choice. He is not less committed than the man who signed the contract without examining it. In many cases, he is more committed because he chose the partnership after doing the work of understanding exactly what he was and was not agreeing to, rather than assuming the contract and the commitment were simply the same thing. I want to hear the specific reasoning from the men who have made this choice, or who are weighing it. Not the general sentiment. The specific calculation. What did you find when you examined the legal structure honestly? What convinced you the partnership was better served without the contract? Or what convinced you it was worth signing despite the risk? Put it in the comments. The men reading this need the real reasoning from men who have actually done the work of thinking it through, rather than the assumption that commitment requires a specific piece of paper. This is Mr. Sterling.